G'day, you're here with Stefan Angelini and Tristan Angelini, the shorter, uglier brother. What a great way to start,
Wow.
huh?
Thank you.
No, look,
I've got more hair than you though,
You do. Mine's going away.
but you're taller, so
A tablet a day keeps the hair growing.
does it?
Let's not talk about that.
Oh.
So, why I wanted to chat with you is because you're a builder, right? I've got no idea about construction. So lucky I've got
I've
you in my
seen that.
life.
I've seen that over the years.
But I see a lot of people come to me when they're upgrading their home. And I reckon the reason I wanted to sit down with you is because what people expect to pay for things like a small renovation, big renovation, or even to do a knockdown rebuild is way off. And I'll give you some examples. Like a client in Brighton that thought they were going to renovate their home for 300 grand, blew out to 450. Client thought they were going to do a knockdown and rebuild for $400,000, and now factoring in a $750,000 budget. A big renos in places like the Armadales and your Brightons was originally expected to be 800 grand. It's actually $1 to $1.5 million for a big reno. And I guess no one realised, one, what construction actually costs, two, how to go through the process, and three, I guess what they should do and why costs a blowout. So I guess talking to you, there's been some reasons why there's issues with construction costs. One of them being materials and the cost of materials. So what's happened with materials?
Oh, well, since the pandemic, materials have been obviously slightly increasing year on year. Usually before the pandemic, it was just, whatever it was, 3%, stuff like that. But then all of a sudden, the pandemic hit, supply chains sort of stopped, and all of a sudden these prices just started hiking, like going crazy through the roof. Like, for instance, we were paying for timber, we were paying $1.80 a metre, lineal metre for just MGP 10, normal timber. And all of a sudden, it always $1.80, $1.83, $1.87. And we were always in the office going, oh, well, it is what it is. You didn't have to really provisional something. You didn't have to worry about it. It was always going to be $1.87, $1.82. It wouldn't kill you. All of a sudden, it started going up to $2, $2.30. And then we're like, oh, let's buy it. Let's get timber. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, we haven't got stock. So even though it was $2.30, we didn't have stock. And that just skyrocketed to $4, $5, $7.
What?
Yeah, we were paying $7.70 a metre at one stage. It sort of started
It's up
to...
4 times from where it was.
Yeah, that was the first thing that started to go out.
Whoa.
To really start to skyrocket.
Yeah.
And then it sort of started trickling down to, plaster and, just everything, concrete prices, steel prices going crazy. So it's been hard as a builder to try and navigate through the pandemic and the mess, because not only were the prices were hiking, suppliers wouldn't give you a fixed price. And then, by the time that you actually call up to build, like to call up for that particular product, it's already gone up 30%. So, a lot of builders have been, hurt throughout the since the pandemic as well. So you would have seen in the news and stuff, a lot of builders going bust.
Yeah.
Timelines?
Pushed out timelines?
Yeah, so now what we're facing at the moment is probably material is, interest rates have hiked. Materials are starting to decrease a little bit.
Okay.
Even itself out, starting to balance. It's not increasing month on month. We're getting letters from everybody, month on month. Price increase 7%, 8%, 12%. So now that's starting to settle. But labour, we've just got a shortage of labour everywhere.
Was it? So I know obviously the pandemic, Victoria shut down, a lot of Australia shut down. No overseas people coming in. Is it the overseas migrants that's lacked? Is it Australian people don't want to be in construction anymore? Or is it too much work?
Well, there's definitely a lot of bureaucracy around building. It's not like it was, when our dad and grandfather was building, Nuna was building. You can't just literally build anymore. There's so much red tape that you need to go through. Insurances, warranty, even with the permitting and stuff like that. And to get back to your question about, why has the price has gone up so much and why are people sort of missing that mark? Nobody really thought or knew that this pandemic was really going to slow the global supply chain. And, we would, labour shortage. I mean, who would have thought that that was going to be? We sort of seen it in a way, like you could foresee that it was going to happen. It was going to happen because the Australian construction industry is very specialised. We have a code that we have to follow. You can't just be a student, and go get carpenters in from overseas and, you want to be a carpenter for the school holidays. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You have to go through your training and all that sort of stuff. But also, you can't just go and get carpenters from overseas, because they have to know our code and the way that we build things. The way that we build here in Australia is different they do in the UK.
Yeah.
Different they do in India. Different they do in Dubai. So, and that's specifically in our residential market. We have different methods of construction. So you have to train people here. And it's got a massive shortage. So labour rates have gone through the roof.
All right. So labour's costing more, materials are costing more.
Yep.
If you look at 12 months, you see where we are now. We're in October 2022. If new build starts are starting to slow down a little bit, just because people aren't doing as much because of increasing interest rates and a slowing economy, do you see the cost of materials and supply decreasing, which might push down construction costs? The reason I ask is because a lot of people now are thinking about renovating or building their home, and they're just like, what's the point? It's going to be so expensive. I don't have the money. Or do you think it's going to be at that level going forward?
Going forward, I honestly don't think that the prices are really going to come down much. Inflation is here. We are seeing inflationary measures every single year until that sort of starts to correct itself. But labour rate, labour rate is going up. Getting people to start to build things at the moment. Even subcontractors, trying to find subcontractors, it's difficult to get the labour. So even though supply, maybe materials might stabilise at the moment, and we'll start slowly getting starts getting the amount and to stable that. The labour rate, we've got a shortage of labour. But if people, I would advise people, if they were going to build, like, there's no better time than sort of ASAP, because if they're going to be waiting, it's going to go up even further, and especially now, which a lot of people general public don't realise, that as of the new National Construction Code has just come out. So as of May next year, I think it is, we're going to be another 10% more in construction costs just from that code change. So we're going to a 7-star energy rating.
Yeah. So
if you think things are expensive now, wait till you have to put thermally broken windows into your house.
Oh.
So, and obviously the world's moving towards this greener, a greener living, sort of, low emissions. That's going to cost more. With disability access is going to be mandatory in every home. So there's changes with that. Now, look, it's probably better for the industry. It's going to be good for the industry because it sort of weans out, a lot of, weans out a lot of cowboys, and but it also increases costs. So it's one of those things. We've got a housing shortage, and the government's enforcing it to ultimately go higher in price.
Yeah, which is going to happen.
Yep.
I guess looking at renovating and applying that cost of construction into real life people who are thinking of making changes to their homes, not developers, but that's the everyday person who might buy a house, could be an older house, who want to do a renovation, say a small renovation, do some bathrooms. Could you give an indication on, let's say they want to renovate a bathroom, they want to strip out the shower, redo the basins, do all the tiling. What's someone paying for something like that nowadays?
Well, you can get it done properly. Do you want to get it done properly?
Properly.
Yeah, if you're going to get it done properly, you're spending, look, we don't do bathrooms, but, I'd presume that anywhere between, say, minimum 30,000 to 60,000, I
Yep.
presume.
See, it's funny.
Yeah.
People think that they can organise it themselves and get away with it for 10 grand. But
Well,
it doesn't happen because you've got
probably,
the tile.
and it's
the
going to
tile-
leak.
Tiles are costing more. I guess all the compliance around having a tiler that's got the certificate that can give you the certificate of waterproofing.
Well, now with the new construction code is that you have to have the product has to be code marked. So if a waterproofer comes in, they have, in order to get a satisfy the building permit, you have to have a watermarked product, and that's one of the new changes that's coming in. So unless you're really up to date with all these code changes, and you're going to go through and get a proper building permit and do it all properly, you're going to need to know that. Now a tiler might come in that might not know it. You might engage, go, oh, I'll get a mate of mine to do it. He knows a tiler,
Yeah.
He comes in, he goes, yeah, no problems, I'll do the waterproofing for you. And he doesn't use the right products. Maybe he uses a different primer, he mix and matches. It's not compliant anymore.
Yeah.
So, then you're not building towards today's code.
Yep.
But things just cost more money. Like, things just cost more now, Gone are the days where people are begging for jobs. Everybody's busy. Everybody's just flat chat. We're calling up tilers. Hey, can you start this job? I'm booked out 6 months. So if us as builders are finding that there's a shortage of labour and materials, imagine if you didn't have the economies of scale to try and get someone in.
No. We spoke about building permits before.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know when to get one. When do you need one? When do you need a building permit? Do you always need one if you're going to do a renovation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Depends on what type of renovation, though.
Okay.
I think it's anything over
$10,000?
$10,000 or $15,000. But
Anything structural?
structural, yeah, you
Need a
need a
building
building permit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, with structural.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I need to go back through the book, but yeah, there's a yeah. And then you need a building contract as well. If anything over, I think it's anything over $10,000 as well. I've got to double check. Don't quote me on that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, something you might know a bit more about is when they start getting into bigger renovations in homes. So, let's say, for example, someone buys a house in an area like a Middle Park, an Armadale, a Brighton. They want to renovate their home.
Yep.
They can't necessarily knock it down because there might be heritage overlays, or they might just love the design of the home. When they start getting into that, I guess, aspect, keeping the structural foundation, there's a lot of issues underpinned in old houses.
Well, first and foremost, if you're doing a renovation, especially in the inner city, besides if it's in the city or not, the reason why it's a lot more expensive is there's so many hoops and bounds because, when you go through to town planning, you have to go through town planning to do an extension. And then all your neighbours, everybody's a lawyer, they're all gonna object, Then you got that speed hump. So you think you buy something in year one, you'll get your permit theoretically in 3 to 6 months. That never happens. You're looking at 2 years down the track, majority of cases, and then then you go, oh, happy days, got my I got my my town planning permit. Now what? Well, now you've got to issue all your protection works notices. So that's what we're seeing at the moment is protection works notice are just crazy,
Because people just pop up and say, "No, don't agree. I want more information."
Yeah,
because you might impact on my house, which is next door.
Correct, and you can understand in a way, but the ability for your neighbour to if they've got obviously if they've objected to your application, you have to still go back to them and serve them with the protection works notice if you're building on the boundary or anything like that. So they still have they can still make your life difficult.
Yeah.
So then by the time you get a building permit, they can drag out that process for another 12 months if they want to. So, and in that time, obviously, what has happened in the last 2 to 3 years? Costs just escalate.
Yep.
So, they're saying, we'll buy this house, we've got some money for renovations. There's so many hoops and bounds that we have to go through, navigate through this bureaucracy that we've got.
So as a process, if you go, someone's bought a house in a city, it might be on like 200, 300 square metres, abutted really close to their neighbour, and it's a 3-bedder house, they want to make it a 4-bedder, therefore they've got to go up. Is the process, go to council because you need a planning permit,
Well, for
because
starters,
of
it
heritage?
depends on how much time's sorry. For starters, it depends on how much time you have in your hands.
Yeah.
I would engage someone, an architect in the inner city that can actually project manage and navigate through that with you. And help you do all those selections, and then get a builder in early because they can advise you, spiritually guide you on, on the construction costs and what you're sort of looking at. But even besides all the protection works and the timing aspect of it, have a 20% contingency when it comes down to doing a renovation, because you just don't know what you're going to find.
If it's on stumps, if there's rotting underneath. Have you got an example of when you've started a renovation on like a decent house and you see issues underneath the house you couldn't account for?
Always, we've gotten into a house and we haven't allowed for any restumping or any underpinning of the structures, of the foundations, and these things have been built 80 years ago. I mean, you've seen some of the stuff that they built 80 years ago. There was no real code that they were following there. It's just, slap some bricks up. Oh yeah, that'll do. No one's inspecting it.
Everyone thinks it's safe because it's double bricked, but
yeah, they built them. They did build them. They built them out of good materials. They just didn't build them properly. So a lot of the times. And look, obviously over time things rot. So we had to underpin the whole side of a house because the foundations were cracking. As we kept digging, we found out that the foundations are only 300 mil deep, and the structure of the house wouldn't have held up if we would have gone double story. So we had to underpin the whole boundary. That was a $40,000 exercise on top of a $400,000 renovation 8 years ago.
8 years ago.
So that was 8 years ago. So 10% just like that can go pretty quickly, especially when you get looking underneath.
So you got time. So it's going to take time if you're doing a big reno. You're going to have to go through the processes of the bureaucracy with both council, building permit, neighbours.
Yeah.
And then you need to get it done and delivered, and you don't know what you're going to face when you actually start doing it. So people need to have time on their hands. And
you just need to look, at the end of the day, whatever it is that you're expecting, it's always good to just lay out the budget. So what is our budget? What is our budget? And then add 20% onto that as a contingency.
Yeah, that's it. You need to go into it with the budget. You can't just start and expect to keep going.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, at the end of the day, you can go to one builder, you can go to another builder. You can go to all these different builders. At the end of the day, they're all going to be roughly the same. If one's cheaper, at the end of it, he's going to be more expensive at the start.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
Yeah.
They're in business for a reason.
Yeah.
We're all in business. We're in business for a reason.
Yeah.
Everyone should be at the same, roughly around the same price. The most, easiest thing to do is just to make sure that you trust that builder. They've got enough experience, they've got enough drive. That's all you can sort of recommend in that aspect. Make sure that they've got a...
I feel like when you're engaging a builder, there's three aspects to it: the triangle, time, quality, and cost.
Yeah, well, that's how
if you
we
want it
judge
done fast and you want good quality, it's going to cost you more.
Yeah.
If you want it done quick, you don't want to pay much. You're not going to get the quality.
Yeah, it's a unicorn. It's a mythological beast. If all those things are, at a 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
No, that's right.
And that's how we judge a lot of our subcontractors, a lot of our trades. If someone's doing a renovation, you want to engage a builder that's got their own carpenters in house, or they've got a lot of experience in renovation, because a renovation builder is very, very different than a volume builder.
Yeah.
And they probably wouldn't even take on those sort of jobs. But you want to know that they've been around for long enough that they've got the right insurances in place, warranty cover, that they've got the right trade base as well.
I've been seeing renos pop up anywhere between $800,000 for nothing too fancy to 1.5, getting a decent level, but they can go well above that depending on what you're doing. So then it goes into like what's the internals like, having an architect on board to make sure they're designed the right way. But I guess what I want to do there is just say, if you're doing it and it is an inner city suburb, expect to spend money.
And then again, it's your own house, and you've got to live in there. You've got to spend that time in the place.
Yep.
Now, you have to sort of calculate the risk as well. Like, do you want to live in something and cut costs, and you're happy with that, just to cut the costs, and you don't really care, Or do you want something ultimately you're going to be living in, you want to enjoy the space, and pay that a little bit of extra money?
Yeah.
You're going to be in there for, if you're going to be long term or short term. You know.
Yep.
It's not really a commercial decision, isn't it? It's more of an emotional decision a lot of people do make at the end of the day with their house. So that's their own personal property.
Yep.
With an investment, maybe it's a little bit different.
Nah, well, investment's there to make money.
But yeah,
I'll keep you happy.
It's there to make money.
But it sounds like, so doing a reno, it almost sounds like a nightmare. Knock down rebuilds. Like, it sounds like that's the easier way, the cheaper way, probably. But that would come with its own issues because you can't always get permits to do that.
Oh, look, knockdown rebuilds. Yeah, I mean, there's a cost benefit in each way.
Yeah.
Knockdown rebuilds, the best thing is everything's going to be obviously new. Sort of patching, and there's less risk of that cost overrun. It's a lot easier to get a sort of solid price. Some renovations come, on budget. Some blow up 50% over.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't actually knock down and rebuild because there's heritage, there's overlays, all that sort of stuff, especially in Melbourne or in the inner cities. Look, knockdown and rebuild can, it is good. You use new products, more compliant products.
The base is the way you want it to be able to build on.
You can start from scratch.
Code.
Yeah.
And
you're not patching things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know with my wife, and her, she loves the old school design, the old Victorians, the Art Decos. You drive past the house.
I love them too. They look fantastic.
Yeah, she goes, if we bought that, we're not knocking it down. We've got to keep it the way it is. Like,
you probably have to though, in a way too, because it's probably heritage listed.
Yeah.
But
those areas all with the same type of housing in there, they look beautiful.
Oh, look amazing.
Yeah.
They look fantastic.
So
I love that look. I love the old school, that old Victorian style home, and then you walk through and it's really modern in the back. I like smaller homes, those smaller inner city homes.
Yep.
I don't like big houses. Too much cleaning. too much.
We've been there, done that.
Yeah, I don't want to clean. I don't clean at the best of times, like if you ask my wife, but I want to. I'd rather do other things than clean.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mate, just in wrapping it up, as I said, I wanted to do this just to give people an indication as to what's involved in processes. If you're thinking about renovating, doing up your house, growing your house, because a lot of people improve their wealth through their home and they buy a house, they want to stay there for a long time, they just don't know the process. I guess one thing to keep in mind is the budget, as you said, there are always cost overruns, so having cash available to do things, because the bank won't always overextend what they're giving you. And a lot of times banks now, especially with finance, they're forcing builders to have fixed price contracts because of...
There's no such thing as a fixed price contract.
Because there's variations and things like that,
well,
but the bank won't pay for that.
But how do you know? Like, that's the thing. How do you know you're going to... I understand the banks won't pay for it, but how do you know what's underneath that house? How do you know?
Right. You need, as the owner, cash available, ready to go. Otherwise, your project is held up.
Ultimately,
you can't finish it.
On a macro level, just don't just don't underestimate the amount of physical cash that you have to put into that house. Make sure you got those reserves.
Yep.
Maybe not go for that. If you haven't got the money, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people now, especially because construction costs have increased so much, doing a big renovation is sometimes more expensive. So you're not going to get the value increase in your house. Let's say you've got a house for $1.5 million. You want to do $1 million renovation. It might not mean you're going to sell it for $3 million. You might sell it for 2.2. So a lot of people are now thinking, well, should I do my reno or should I go and buy a place around the corner that's already sort of done or half done? But I guess when people are doing that, you've got to consider what's your timing differences. Are you going to sell your house for the right amount that you want to get that next purchase? What's the stamp duty implication of getting into the new house? It's becoming a real conundrum out there where people don't know, should I renovate my home or should I just go and buy something up the road that's already done?
Yeah, you're right. But the market is also just changing rapidly. Speak to yourself. What about interest rates? Also, I mean, I don't know, interest rates at the moment, repayments on those sort of houses, if it's your own personal place of residence. I mean, surely that's going to be putting downwards pressure on a lot of people.
It's killer. Yeah, it's killer. Which is part of, just in wrapping this up, interest rates and everything like that do put a rope around how much you can spend and what your repayment's going to be and how you have to change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So for anyone out there that's thinking about doing anything like this, what we're offering everyone is a free stress test spreadsheet. If you wanted to, use it to increase your loan amount, but as well as increase interest rates to see what happens to your family budget and whether or not you can actually do it and leverage yourself that extra extent. If you want more information on it, reach out to hello@angeladvisory.com.au and we'll flick you the spreadsheet with no worries. So, mate, I wanted to wrap it up there. Thanks for talking construction.
Look, I know I might sound a bit...
all thing boring.
I might sound pessimistic in a way, but, sometimes you have to look after the downside and the upside can take care of itself.
It's real, mate. It's better to understand and be aware and go into it versus just being optimistic and then realising it's
always
a shit show.
Should be right. Yeah, should be right. And then it is a shit show at the end. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
All right, too easy.
Thanks.